It's primary presentation Sunday in our ward, and I hope I'm ready. What am I doing to prepare? What kind of tools am I using to help make it a positive experience for our primary kids and for the congregation? Let's get curious. Hello, I'm Mark Stanger, and welcome to Curious Workmanship, where it's our mission to help make you a more effective leader and gospel teacher in your church service and at home. Now, aside from Easter and Christmas Sunday, there may not be a more beloved Sunday for us as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints than what happens in each ward at the end of the year, the primary program, or primary presentation as it's being referred to now. While all of our meetings should be focused on the Savior, it's such a gift to be able to be taught out of the mouth of babes through word and song as the children of our wards share with us their testimonies and the things they've worked so hard to learn throughout the year in primary. For me, it's always been such a good reminder of what the Savior taught about children in the Gospels. Of children, he says, "For such is the kingdom of heaven." For those of you watching or listening who are friends of other faiths, I'd invite you to talk to a missionary, a friend, or neighbor who attends our church and ask them when you can attend the primary program. And if you don't know of anybody you can speak to, go to churchofjesuschrist.org and you can chat with missionaries there, or use the tools on the website to locate a church meeting house near you. These meetings are absolutely heavenly. As a primary music leader, however, this joyous occasion might induce more than just a little bit of anxiety for some of us. I know I've been able to rest just a little bit easier as I step back and remind myself that this is the Lord's meeting, and these are His children, and He will sustain me, as He always has, as I give my best effort and get out of the way enough to allow His Spirit to do the teaching through whatever may happen, good or perhaps not so good. Believe me, God can use whatever that offering may be to draw His children to Him. There are a million different ways to go about this, and so many talented people who are sharing great ideas online about how to do this. I think that there are probably more resources available to help primary music leaders than any other calling in the church. This being curious workmanship, though, I thought for today I could show you just a couple of technology ideas that I'm using, and maybe by sharing those ideas, it'll be helpful to someone with the same calling as me today, or someone who's starting preparation in a couple months for the primary presentation next year. First, full disclosure from me. I am not your typical primary music leader. And as such, I feel like I am ill-equipped in some of the standard ways, if there are standard ways, that someone would go about this calling. My wife would tell you that arts and crafts are not my strong suit, or at least that's what I tell her. It's something that I can do. I'm okay at it, but it's not something where I've got a great deal of comfort. And so for me to get out the poster board or the flannel board or whatever crafty type of thing that I've seen so many really, really talented people be effective with in their church callings, that's just not something that's in my wheelhouse. And so when I received this calling to serve as a primary music leader last year at this time, I knew that first, I was excited about learning how to do those things and be more effective in those areas. And I've tried a lot of those things over the last year and become a lot better at some of those ideas. But secondly, that I needed to make sure that I found my lane of expertise where I could and tried to apply the things that I'm really good at to the calling that I have at that particular time. And to be sure, I've learned a lot through this calling in other areas that I maybe was not as expert in. And one of the things that I've discovered is that a lot of these techniques and ideas and tools that are in use in primary are there for a reason, and that is that they've been used to great effect by a lot of people for a very long time. It's just for me, I knew that it was going to be a little bit uncomfortable if I was relying on those as my first resort. And so I've used a lot with technology, and not anything really out of the ordinary. I think these are actually pretty simple tools, pretty accessible to everyone. And I also don't want to give the impression that this is my first and only go-to every single time I teach in primary. But these are things that I have used, and I think used to great effect in our primary, and perhaps tools that not everybody else is as comfortable with. So I just want to share this with you here, and you can take it for what it's worth. I use presentation software quite a bit in my career, and so I've got a comfort level with this. And this presentation software, whether it be Keynote or PowerPoint or Google Slides, these are actually really good for a lot of things other than just giving a presentation. And I've done a lot of things with graphic design. I've done a lot of things with newsletters and other announcements and bulletins for our wards. And again, this isn't the only program that I would use for these things, but it's a lot more flexible than just standing up and giving a presentation. There's a lot more things that you can do with this. One of the things that I've enjoyed using this for in primary is what I've often seen done with a flip chart or perhaps posters or something like that. And you may have seen this in your ward, or maybe doing this in your ward. Again, these other ideas are fine as well, just not, like I say, not in my wheelhouse per se. But I think for me, I knew that if I was trying to do that for every single song, every single week, it was going to be a pretty significant burden for me. And so I started thinking, well, how can I replicate that in the world that I live in? And so I kind of settled on presentation software, and I use my iPad a lot in primary to help teach songs. And there's a couple of things that I've learned that I think are kind of helpful. So what we're looking at here is my outline for our primary program that we're going to be doing this Sunday. In fact, we're practicing this tonight again. So preparing with this as we speak. And so we've got all of the songs, and I've kind of grouped each of those songs here underneath a heading so that I can keep them organized. And as soon as I found out what the songs were that we were doing for our primary program, I went through and I started creating all of this. And some of these things I had already created in one way or another because we were singing these songs as we go throughout the year. But I organized them like this so that I would have everything in one place for the program. And anytime we needed to practice anything that was related to the program or any of those songs, I could start early with the kids and have a consistent presentation and a consistent idea for how we were going to move through those things so that the kids would familiarize themselves with this way of teaching. And so we've got all of the songs here. Here's a song that most of you would be familiar with. One of the songs that we're going to sing is Book of Mormon Stories. I imagine a lot of you are doing that this year, this being the Book of Mormon year in our Come Follow Me study. And so I've just organized these slides in here. You can see that these are very simple. I didn't want to add a bunch of other distracting elements that would make it difficult for the kids to read the text or see the images that I was trying to share with them here. But one of the things that I've seen as being challenging with PowerPoint or with Keynote or whatever your presentation software is, if you're doing this, is just finding consistent imagery. And you can go out and you can do Google searches and you can find all sorts of stuff out there, but it's really hard to make it consistent from even within the same verse or even within the same song. And it ends up looking like one of the sunbeams put it together or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it may be a little bit more difficult to consume if it's not consistent in its presentation. And so one of the things that I've done, rather than go out and find different imagery for every song, and I think I've got one song in here that's a little bit different because I created it before, but I decided, I started thinking, well, where can I find a really consistent icon library? You see that the church is doing this, and they've actually created an icon library, symbols library that they have that we can use for different things, but it's pretty limited in the number of things that are there. And again, it looks different than pretty much anything else. You've got to have that library if you're going to use that. So hopefully that'll be expanded on over time, and I'm sure the church will do that. But I also wanted something that was maybe a little bit more visually compelling and something that was familiar to the kids. And as I thought about this, I thought, well, there's an icon library that's available and kind of universally applicable, whether it be on Microsoft platforms, your Windows tablet or computer, or on your Mac or Apple devices, and that is Emojis. So whatever device you have uses these things. So these are going to be images and a look to these images that's going to be familiar to kids because they're using them all the time. And it's actually really, really extensive in terms of the different icons that are available. You can expand this beyond just using it for, as I am here, for the primary presentation or for teaching songs. There's all sorts of fun things that you can do with emojis, and maybe that's something that I'll spend a little bit of time on in a future episode. But for today, just want to share how I did this. And so obviously you're pulling the words from the songs and copy and paste those from the church's website online, and you pull that text in. Again, I just decided to keep mine simple. The theme doesn't really matter here. You just want something, or I feel like you just want something that's easy to view, because you imagine you're presenting this to the kids and you probably don't have a massive poster board sized display that you're working with here. You're probably working off of a tablet or maybe your computer or something, if you have that to bring. So think something that's somewhere between an 11-inch and a 15-inch screen that you're working with here. And so things need to be pretty big. As far as the font size goes, this has worked in our ward, and you can see here that this font is about 200 point. I feel like anything much smaller than that becomes kind of difficult for the kids to see. And my other idea with this is that I want them to learn by singing the songs. I want them to memorize primarily by repetition. And so this is just an aid. And so if there are imperfections in the way that I'm doing this, or imperfections in whether the sunbeams are going to be able to read these words or not, I feel like if I can just give everybody a little bit of a hint, then by repetition of those songs, they'll have it. And these will just be reminders more than anything. And then you see the emojis in here. One thing that I didn't know, I had to go and look this up, is how to bring up your emoji keyboard to select these things. And this is different depending on the platform that you're using. And so you can Google this so that you can see how to do it on an iPad or something else. So if I want to select another emoji, then I have to bring up my emoji keyboard here. And I can do that on my Mac by holding down Control, Command, Space. I don't know why the keyboard shortcut is so difficult there, but you can see it brings up this viewer where you can go through and you can see all of the different emojis. And right here, you've got a really, really excellent, consistent icon set that you can use for all sorts of different things. Probably a lot here that would be inappropriate or you wouldn't ever use in primary, but there's a lot of really good things as well that you can use. And you can see some of the common ones that I've used in the past, different numbers, talking about the love of God, talking about gift and comfort, all of these things. You can use these for all sorts of different things, but there's a wide variety of different imagery and symbols here that you can use that are visually familiar. And my experience has been that these are appealing and understandable by the kids in our primary. So I've got that set up for all of the different songs, and you may consider that as an idea. Again, I wanted this to be consistent to the kids in our primary, and so this is how I have done this when I've wanted to present something that would typically be done in a flip chart or a big piece of poster board or something like that. And I just share it on my iPad to the kids. So I load it up on my iPad, make sure that it's available and downloaded so that you're not reliant on the Wi-Fi connection that might be just a little bit flaky, and make sure that it's there, and then you can use that on your tablet or your laptop or whatever else you want to use to present to kids. I think phone screens are probably too small to be able to see it, but those other ones should be just fine. So as far as this Sunday, how am I going to use this in our primary presentation or our primary program? Well, the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to figure out what kind of device that you're using and what your environment kind of dictates that you would need to use for it to be workable in your particular chapel. And in ours, I feel like the best situation for me is to just set up in the first row or two where all of the kids can see me. And then I'll use my laptop because it's got a little bit bigger screen than my tablet. And that is big enough for them to be able to see and get the hint of what it is they need to sing. I know that I've seen some ideas online where people are actually setting up a big TV in the church and then connecting their tablet or their laptop through that, either wired through an HDMI cable or perhaps a wireless connection using AirPlay or something else. And that could work as well. I think the reason that doesn't work in my situation is that we don't really have a massive TV that is on a cart that we can bring into the chapel. And if we did, because of the size of the TV, it would probably have to be kind of in the middle of the congregation to be as visible as my little tablet would be right from the front row or two. And so that's how I made that decision, but your mileage will vary there based on what's accessible to you. I want to show you as well how I'm planning on running this, because I'm going to be managing this wirelessly. One thing that I've done in the past is I've just asked someone else to run the presentation for me. And my kids have done that. I've had other people help me with that in the past. One of the things that's a little bit difficult there, for me anyway, is that sometimes as a music director, I might want to vary the tempo of the music or emphasize different things. And if someone who's unfamiliar with that is running the presentation, then sometimes that can become just a little bit disjointed. I know that that's probably not a massive issue, but it's something where if I have it completely in my hands and my control, then I feel like I've got a little bit more comfort level with that. And so what I'm going to try this time, and I think will work all right, is to use my iPhone. And this is not something that's available to everybody. If you are a Mac user or an Apple user like me, then you can do it this way. And this is just one idea, but this is why you might choose to use your Windows computer and connect it via HDMI or have somebody else run it for you. So there's lots of ways to do this, but this is something where I feel like maybe people aren't as familiar with how this would work. And if you're an Apple user, then here's another idea that you could potentially use. So Apple, you see that I'm using Keynote here, and Apple has the ability through Keynote to set up your phone as a Keynote remote. And so this is what I'm going to use. And this allows me to direct the music, hold the phone in one hand, and navigate through these slides, all while being able to still conduct and direct the music and interact with the kids so that I can help them. So I just want to show you quickly how this would work. So we have here, of course, our presentation software that we've been looking at here, and this will work with Keynote on an Apple device. And here we have my iPhone being mirrored to the screen just so that you can see. So imagine that this one is in your hand, right? And so I've got my Keynote up here on my laptop, and then my iPhone is in my hand, and I can open up Keynote, which is the presentation software. So this is Mac's or Apple's equivalent of PowerPoint. And when I come into Keynote, I've got all of my presentations. You see my primary presentation. I'm not going to bring that up here. I've also got an option here, this little button, and this is the Keynote remote. And so if I click this, then it's going to bring up a presentation remote right here. Now you could do this on a Windows computer as well, just by going out and buying a $20 presentation remote with a USB connection online, and you can find those at Amazon and lots of other places. If you wanted to do this and you were using a Windows computer and wanted to do something similar, you can do it this way as well. The nice thing about this on a Mac is that you can see exactly what's going on, where with a typical presentation clicker, you're not getting the visual of what slide you're on, and it's probably behind you if you're directing the music. In any case, I can come here, and on my phone, I can hit play, and now it is playing the presentation on my screen. And I can simply click through here and go through the presentation as the primary kids sing. And so this seems to work really, really well, really easy. So this is just an example of how this would work, but maybe I can step back here and we'll maximize this screen. And I want to show you just quickly how this would look if we were to bring it up on a TV. So you see the TV that I've got here behind me. Let me see if I can fix just a couple of things so that you can see that just a little bit better. So here's what this would look like if I were doing this in our ward building, or if you were to do this in your ward building. So you have a TV or a screen set up somewhere. And so for me, this is just going to be my MacBook that I'm going to have on the front row, and maybe I'll still have one of my kids holding it there so that everybody can see it, but I don't have to worry about the screen. And then in your ward, if you've got a big screen or something, this might be all the way at the back of your chapel so that the kids can see it, and you've got your laptop or something else hooked up to that. So you've got a screen that the presentation is running on, and then you have your presentation remote that this is going to be working through. So I've got my presentation remote up, and I'm playing the presentation, and now I can walk right through this. And you see on this screen, I've got the current slide and the next slide that's coming up. And so, given the land, if they lived righteously, here we go on the next verse. And so I can continue to direct, I can continue to interact with the kids, and I can just go right through this. I can also look down and I can see clearly where we are in the song, and I can move through these things. If I needed to go to another song, then it's all right here, and I can pick up on another song or go wherever I need for that other song as well. So this is just one idea of something that might be useful to you, something that maybe you haven't thought of in this way before. Again, lots of ways to go about it this way, but I think there are a few things that are applicable whatever kind of technology you're using. One is that you've got access to some sort of presentation software that you can use, and access to emojis that you can do, whether it's Google Slides, whether it's Keynote on a Mac, or whether you're using PowerPoint as well. And I've used this type of system with all three of these things. And then secondly, if you wanted to use this type of presentation, then you've got access to those types of tools as well, or you have a technology specialist in your ward that can help you with this type of thing. So I hope that some of these ideas will be helpful to you in your church calling. And even though this is focused on primary singing time, I've used much of what I've shown you in one way or another in church teaching and leadership in various capacities over the years. But I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments below or at curiousworkmanship.org. And until next time, stay curious.